And do you remember how big of a scandal it was when Trump called Georgia's Secretary of State and told him to find Trump 12,000 more votes after the 2020 election? A sitting president asking an official to help him cheat, to help him win an election he did not win? Now, that call was secret. It had to be leaked to the press. And now Trump is bragging about how he is pressuring officials to help him meddle in our elections. He's blurting stuff like this out at his rallies.
I called up the very powerful, very good U.S. attorney in California, and I said, do me a favor. Take a look. They're trying to steal that election, too.
Do me a favor. Do me a favor. That's a kind of alarming thing coming out of his mouth. Now, we don't know for certain, but we assume that the U.S. attorney in California Trump wanted a favor from was this guy, Bill Esteli, who, after Trump started baselessly alleging California's primary elections were rigged, announced multiple election fraud investigations in California, despite no evidence of any fraud. And it's very clear that Trump is trying to breathe new life into the big lie. It's clear that he is trying to use his power as president to spread misinformation and fear and suppress votes. But it's also clear that people are not going to sit around and take it. They are fighting back all across the country. Yesterday, a new analysis from the Washington Post found that despite or maybe even because of Trump, Democratic turnout is up across the country, even in Republican districts. For months now, the Trump administration has been trying to purge voter rolls across the country by using an error-prone database to check voter citizenship, purging perfectly legal voters in the process, even though voter fraud by non-citizens is exceedingly rare, to put it mildly. Yesterday, a federal judge blocked the Trump administration from continuing the practice, which the judge said threatened the sacred right to vote. But the fight is far from over. And on another election night across the country, that fight is very important to pay attention to. Joining me now is Raphael Warnock, senator for the great state of Georgia and author of the new book, The Crooked Places Made Straight. I have right here. It's a little shorter from your other book, but it's still excellent and easy read for anyone.
Great.
Let me start by asking you, one of the points you make in this book, or that I took away from this book, is that we have to look to history and realize a lot of things have happened in history that we've made it through, but also be clear-eyed about kind of what is ahead, too. And that's a point you've made in the past. Last week, Republicans in Georgia decided to reject Governor Brian Kemp's call to redraw states' congressional maps, which would diminish, of course, the power of black voters. There was some reporting that suggested they held back because of concern it would generate greater voter turnout in favor of Jon Ossoff and in favor of the governor's candidate. Do you think that's why?
Oh, that's clearly what happened.
Yeah.
They didn't all of a sudden, receive a divine revelation. I can tell you that. They didn't wake up and say, well, we're going to do the right thing. No, the people of Georgia stood up. And as a voice for Georgia, I thought it was important for me to stand there with them. And so I actually left D.C. in the middle of the week because I thought it was important to stand up in this moment where a sitting president of the United States is, and the Supreme Court has encouraged the governor and others to diminish the power of ordinary citizens. Mm-hmm. And I was inspired by the ways in which ordinary people were standing up and saying, no, we're not going to let this happen. This is Georgia, after all. This is the home state of Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis, who was a member of my church, and Andrew Young. We know who we are. And I tell you, before I got back to Washington, the news had come down that they were not going to do this after all. They were right to be worried that this was going to be a massive voter turnout in response to this. I've got news for them. Georgia voters are still going to turn out in massive numbers because of what they're not doing. The Trump administration isn't doing a thing to help with these rising costs. The Georgia legislature met for months while they were in session. They did nothing for these rising utility costs that Georgians are being saddled with, the crisis in housing and affordability. They came back into session to prevent Georgians from holding them accountable. It backfired last week, and it's going to backfire come November.
One of the points, and I've talked to Senator Ossoff about this as well as Keisha Lance Bottoms, just that they're going to come back, I assume, the Republican legislature next year and try to do this.
They tabled the issue. I expect them to raise it again, for sure.
And we should be pretty clear-eyed about that, right?
Absolutely.
Of the stakes here, essentially, in these elections. Let me ask you about another point of pushback that you were also involved in, because last week we also saw the federal government abandon its plans to turn a warehouse in Social Circle, Georgia, into a 10,000-bed ICE detention center. Why do you think the Trump administration did that, and what do you think the lessons are from that?
I can tell you that Social Circle, Georgia, is a town of 5,000 people. It's a red district. Trump has a lot of votes in Social Circle, Georgia. I've got a few. But I promised the people of Georgia that I would stand with them even as I fought for them. I would walk with them. And it was important for me to show up for the people of Social Circle, Georgia. They were going to build a 10,000-bed detention center across the street from an elementary school. I went and I saw it with my own eyes. This 10,000-bed detention center would have tripled the size of the town. It would have been overwhelming to their water infrastructure, their water treatment facility. They didn't have the wherewithal to sustain this. The mayor learned about it by reading about it in the Washington Post. And so I and others continued to raise the issue. And the word that we have right now is that they are not going to open this warehouse of a detention center, which, by the way, they spent $128 million for, twice the market rate. The people of Social Circle, Georgia, whatever they voted for, they didn't vote for this. And they made that very clear. I think the lesson is when we shine a bright light, light is a disinfectant. And when we elevate the issue and when the people raise their voices, it makes a difference. It made a difference in Minnesota. No one is, not enough people are saying it. The people of Minnesota made a change there. They made a difference. The ICE left because of the ways in which folks were standing up, ordinary neighbors standing up for each other. People of Social Circle, Georgia, pushed back. And when we push back, we're seeing results. And so in this moment, the answer to this assault on democracy is more democracy. The people raising their voices, using all of the instruments of protest that make a democracy healthy. And this is how we win.
Ask you about another piece we've talked about before, which is faith. And this is something that's also interwoven throughout your book. Of course it is. And of course, your own history. And you've talked about how it's driven you in terms of how you think about issues from a moral perspective and also how you govern. When you hear people, I know you had some comments on Speaker Mike Johnson and you've met with him. When you hear people like J.D. Vance, whose book came out the same day as yours, I believe, talking about his faith and using it as justification for supporting the policies he supports, what goes through your mind?
I don't know what Bible he's reading. And I think, what we've seen time and time again is that there are those who are people of faith. Christians have often been on the wrong side of history. They've been on the wrong side of the issue. There were many Christians who supported slavery. There were Christians who were silent during Hitler's Third Reich, who stated what I'm hearing from a lot of my Republican friends when I remind them that there's some 2,000 verses in the Bible that talk about how you treat the poor. The book says that the one who crushes the poor insults his maker. What Mike Johnson and others have said to me is that this is about personal behavior. No, I think that's a misreading of the scripture. And that kind of way of constraining faith so that it's only in the realm of the individualistic and privatistic, that's how you get a Führer in Germany. And the church going right along with it. That's how you get a Christian slaveocracy. This is a moral moment in America. And we need people of faith and people who claim no faith tradition at all, but are people of moral courage to stand up for the best and the highest in our ideals. That's why I wrote this book, The Crooked Places Made Straight. We're the ones to bend that arc that bends towards justice.
Senator Raphael Warnock, always a pleasure talking to you. I always learn so much. Very thoughtful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so very much.